Imagine for a moment you are a fisherman off the coast of Kyushu in late 1274. The year has been ordinary, the tides familiar. But then, on the horizon, something impossible appears. Not one ship, not 10, but hundreds. A forest of masts and sails, stretching as far as the eye can see. This is no trading fleet. This is the wrath of the Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in history, and it has come for Japan. This terrifying sight was the culmination of one man's ambition, Kublai Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan. From his magnificent capital in Dadu, what we now call Beijing, he had conquered China and ruled over a vast domain. He had sent emissaries to Japan demanding they submit and become a vassal state. The samurai-led government in Kamakura, however, offered only defiance. For Kublai Khan, this was an insult that could not be ignored. So he assembled a force the likes of which the world had rarely seen. The invasion fleet was a marvel of medieval engineering and military might. It consisted of nearly 900 ships, carrying around 40,000 men, a mix of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers. They landed at Hakata Bay, modern-day Fukuoka. The Japanese samurai, legendary warriors in their own right, were waiting. But they were about to face a new kind of warfare. The samurai were accustomed to honorable, one-on-one combat. The Mongols fought as a unified, disciplined army. They used coordinated infantry movements, volleys of poison-tipped arrows, and explosive, clay-cased bombs that terrified the Japanese horses and men. The initial battles were brutal. The Mongols pushed the Japanese defenders back from the beaches, forcing them inland. The samurai fought with incredible bravery, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by the invaders' tactics and technology. It seemed as though nothing could stop the Mongol advance. The fall of Japan felt not just possible, but inevitable. As night fell after the first day of brutal fighting, the Japanese defenders retreated behind their fortifications, expecting a final, devastating assault in the morning. But the morning came, and the sea was empty. The horizon was clear. The massive Mongol fleet was gone. What happened? Historians believe the Mongol commanders, wary of the unpredictable weather and concerned about their extended supply lines, decided to pull their forces back to the ships for the night. It was a fateful decision. During the night, a ferocious storm, a typhoon, descended upon the fleet. The winds howled and the sea churned with violent fury. The Mongol ships, many of which were hastily built river vessels unfit for the open ocean, were smashed against the rocks or simply swallowed by the waves. A third of the fleet was destroyed. With his forces battered and depleted, the Mongol commander had no choice but to order a full retreat back to the mainland. Japan was saved for now. The Japanese people saw this as more than just good luck. It was a sign that their gods were protecting them. But the threat was far from over. Kublai Khan was a man who did not accept defeat. The loss of his fleet was a setback, a humiliation, but it only hardened his resolve. He immediately began planning a second, even larger invasion. Back in Japan, the samurai government knew they had been granted a temporary reprieve, not a permanent victory. They used the next 7 years wisely, in a frantic race against time. They strengthened their coastal defenses, most notably by constructing a massive stone wall over 20 kilometers long along the coast of Hakata Bay. This wall, the Genko-Borui, was designed to prevent enemy forces from ever gaining a foothold on the beaches again. Samurai from all over the country were conscripted, trained, and stationed along the coast, their swords sharpened, ready for the inevitable return of the Mongols. In the summer of 1281, it came. This time the scale was almost unimaginable. Kublai Khan had dispatched 2 separate fleets, an eastern fleet from Korea and a much larger southern fleet from newly conquered southern China. Combined, they numbered over 4,000 ships and carried an astonishing 140,000 soldiers. It was one of the largest naval invasion forces in history, dwarfing the first attempt. The plan was for the 2 fleets to rendezvous and launch a coordinated, overwhelming assault. The Eastern Fleet arrived first and immediately began its attack on Hakata Bay. But this time the Japanese were ready. The stone wall proved to be a formidable obstacle. The Mongol ships couldn't land their cavalry, and their soldiers were forced to disembark in the shallows, where they were met by waves of determined samurai. For weeks the fighting was relentless and savage. The Mongols launched raid after raid, but the Japanese defenders, using the wall as their shield, held their ground. The bay was filled with the sounds of battle, the clash of steel and the screams of men. The samurai, fighting on their home soil to protect their families and their way of life, were ferocious. The Mongol advance stalled, turning the invasion into a bloody stalemate. Meanwhile, the massive southern fleet was finally arriving, delayed by logistical problems. The combined Mongol force was now assembled, an awe-inspiring armada that filled the entire bay. They prepared for a final decisive push, one that the outnumbered Japanese defenders surely could not withstand. The fate of Japan hung by a thread. The samurai stood on their walls, watching the endless sea of enemy ships, their hearts filled with dread, but also with unwavering resolve. They had done all they could. Now their fate was in the hands of the gods, and it seemed the gods answered. On the night of August 15th, 1281, history repeated itself, but on a cataclysmic scale. A second, even more powerful typhoon swept in from the sea. It was a storm of biblical proportions. For 2 solid days, the typhoon raged, unleashing its full fury on the Mongol fleet, which was anchored in the exposed bay. The ships were chained together to create a stable fighting platform, a tactic that now proved to be their undoing. As the massive waves crashed over them, the ships were smashed into one another, splintering like matchsticks. The wind tore their sails to shreds and snapped their masts. Thousands of vessels were sunk, driven ashore, or simply vanished into the abyss. When the storm finally passed, the scene was one of an utter annihilation. The bay was a graveyard of ships and men. The once mighty Mongol armada had been almost completely wiped out. Estimates suggest that over half of the invading force perished in the storm. Those who survived and made it to shore were exhausted, demoralized, and easily hunted down by the victorious samurai. It was a disaster of unprecedented magnitude for the Mongol Empire. Kublai Khan's dream of conquering Japan was shattered, drowned beneath the waves. The Japanese called this miraculous storm the Kamikaze, the divine wind. It became a cornerstone of their national identity, a powerful legend that reinforced the belief that Japan was a special land, protected by the gods and unconquerable. The story of the divine wind would be told for centuries, a symbol of hope and divine intervention in the face of impossible odds. The failed invasions had a profound impact. For the Mongols, it marked the limit of their expansion. Never again would they attempt to invade Japan. Kublai Khan's reputation was tarnished, and the immense cost of the campaigns strained his empire. For Japan, the victory came at a great price. The cost of maintaining the defenses had bankrupted the Kamakura government, leading to internal strife and eventually its downfall. Yet the legacy of the Mongol invasions and the legend of the Kamikaze endured, shaping Japanese culture and history for generations to come. It's a dramatic tale of ambition, defiance, and the awesome, unpredictable power of nature, a reminder that sometimes the fate of nations can be decided not just by armies, but by the wind itself.